Hello, my name is Nikki Toyama-Szeto, and I'm the Executive Director of Christians for Social Action, and your host for today's episode of 20-Minute Takes. Today we talk to Eddie Kaufholz. He's the Director of Strategic Communication at Bread for the World. And we talk about storytelling and the importance of community when listening and holding vulnerable people's stories, and also what it means to stir the Christian imagination. Join us for this episode of 20-Minute Takes. Eddie Kaufholz, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of 20-Minute Takes.
Oh, Nikki, it's like going home again with my old friend. We're podcasting again. Yes, sorry, you're introing and doing your thing. It's so nice to be here.
I have really appreciated the way that you talk about story, and so we brought you on because I think it is particularly helpful for activists to think about story. You've been a storyteller and leading communications at various justice-based organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think about, like, what is a good story?
You know, it's interesting because even the getting the brand of storyteller, I almost push back on that for myself.
Really?
I feel like I'm actually just it's a sneaky way for me to be a story like receiver, because I think it's just like there's a lot of stuff I have not understood. Like if you listen back to our podcast that we did together, The New Activist.
New Activist. Old days. Yeah.
Old days. But like that show, our friend Richard said, that show is really about you learning in front of everybody. And I was like, and he's totally right. Right. So for me, it's always come from that place. So my background is actually in counseling, and in counseling, you reveal and give nothing of yourself except for very pointed moments where it's very necessary. But generally it's, tell me more. You're finding patterns. And I found that when I was a counselor and when I was seeing clients, that receiving of their story actually was more formative for me than certainly my process of story gathering and telling was for them. And I think that's just been, so that's been kind of the process. And it's sort of been, now it's just cloaked in like, you do interviews or you do comms or creative, but it's always just the gathering and the pulling because I don't understand something. And so I'm going to try to create a safe space and see if I can just gather something from you. And then that's really helpful for me and maybe for other people. So that was kind of not the answer, but kind of like, that's how I actually have seen that kind of progression in my life where that started.
So it's kind of, you're more of a story collector.
Yeah.
And you happen to share out some of your collection, but it sounds like your kind of journey through the world is actually as a curious collector of interesting stories. So I think one of the things that has been really interesting to me is that you have been somebody who has communicated the stories of some pretty vulnerable people, whether it's working through IJM or through your work with Bread for the World, or just in some of your other places. How is it that you think about holding other people's stories? And I know there's a lot of talk right now, too, about having people tell their own stories. But in reality, folks are sometimes not in the places where they can tell their stories. Do you have any thoughts about like either guidelines that you have for people who are story collectors like you, or people who want to be advocates, but they're also kind of a little bit entrusted with this trust of a story that may not be fully their own?
Yeah, I think it is a generous interpretation to think that I alone have some sort of like pathway to this, because in reality, the thing that I would say to anyone who is trying to be a storyteller, story gatherer, telling sensitive stories is never, ever, ever do it alone. Like never. Mm-hmm. I think that in no way can storytelling be a solo effort. I know at the end of the day, it's one person on a mic, but you and I are on a mic. We've got someone else listening to us right now. We'll have two other people editing us. You'll have a final listen. It's all filtered, and it needs to be, I think, because of the extremely sensitive and difficult nature of someone sharing their story, which is now just a buzzword for some of the things that are at the core of their vulnerability.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. Like if you're asking someone to share their story, you're not just asking them to share jokes or, their shopping list. You're asking them to get inside something that maybe they've processed, maybe they're comfortable with, but is vulnerable. I think we at least owe it to them if we're going to broadcast that vulnerability to put it through layers. And I would say the other thing that I feel like very passionate about, like we should not be solo creators.
Mm-hmm.
The second one though is just unconditional empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I have interviewed people that I deeply disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go in and I want to wink at my agenda, or I want to slightly, but I'm like, that's not what this is. This isn't that kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be a trusted space for real people to have real conversations about things that matter. And so you have to do, like, you can't get on a microphone. You can't start writing. You can't start whatever. You can't start broadcasting until there is at least a part of you that can empathize. And if you can't, just don't talk to them. Just don't do it. Like there's other interviews to have, but like, I've got to be able to pull just a little bit of like, I could see how you would feel that way about that. We can have and then we can have a conversation, but it's got to be, and then I think that kind of gets wrapped into like, then it becomes safe, and safety I think is a really important, like you and I have safety right now. We trust each other. We're going to, if one of us falls off the ledge, we're going to catch the other one. This is a safe environment. If it wasn't, this turns wonky quick.
No, I think that's really true. I think I appreciate what you're saying about that, entering in with some empathy or with some curiosity of there's a reason this person who may come to absolute opposite or repulsive conclusions has come to those conclusions. And I think that's actually such a great thing to model, because I sort of feel like that's what a lot of people are longing for, is not the yelling talking points, but I think something of this like seeking for some sort of understanding, not agreement, but maybe a little bit of an understanding from someone's point.
Yeah. And also knowing for myself, like, even with all of that, I'm still a white, cisgender, middle upper class, male, Christian. Like, I know all of my lanes, right?
Yeah.
There are some conversations that are like, this isn't mine. I shouldn't do this. Like I should ask some real permission. Like, is this okay to do? Yeah. And there were just some things I never touched because it was like, I need to lay aside like me as Eddie and just go like, me as an entity in this world. I don't, this isn't a conversation I should get to have. And so, someone else can record that week, or someone else can do a better job with the conversation. But I think there comes a little bit of just ego with that. Like, this isn't about me getting this moment. This is about them telling their story. And sometimes just my presence makes that not a safe place for them, even if they like me as a person. That this isn't right for them or for what they're about to talk about. So
no, I appreciate the self-awareness. Okay, I've got a question that might come a little bit out of a baseball field we haven't identified yet.
Yes. Go Nats.
But you operate on a couple of different levels, and I wonder if you might have some insights on this. I have a couple of friends, mostly like people of color, who are either authors or speakers. They're people like kind of on this content producing side. And they have run into gatekeepers like producers, executive producers, editors who are from a totally separate social occasion, usually from the white community, who are sort of entrusted with this powerful thing of like editing or gatekeeping or releasing this artistic creative project into the world. And they sort of just don't get it. Do you have any advice for folks who do have some of those gatekeeping roles about how they should think about stories that are really, really different from their own? So it might be a pastor letting someone bring a testimony into their church. But in my head, I'm also sort of thinking of like, oh no, those editors at those Christian publishing houses that just don't understand or get the dynamic, or these other kind of content creative gatekeepers. Any thoughts about like either how you've engaged with that or how you would think about that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, That is such a deeply important question. It sounds like I'm prefacing in order to find an answer, and I'm not. But it's like there is a nuance to that I don't know that people truly understand the degree to which everybody externally will say that there's no gatekeeper, right? These publishers and content creators will say there's not, but then that there are walls being hit. And so to answer your question, the advice for the gatekeeper is one, I would ask them to be brave and direct in their feedback. I think sometimes, quoting Brene Brown, it's like clarity is kindness.
Yes.
I think there's part of it that's like, if you're a gatekeeper, first of all, that's your job. You're paid to be a gatekeeper. You're paid to say yes or no. So I'm a gatekeeper of Bread for the World content. It's an easy gate to keep, to be honest, because Bread's so positive and everything's so great. But you got to say no to some stuff, and sometimes it's hard. So I think the first is like to be crystal clear on like, I am rejecting your manuscript for these reasons, and don't be afraid. Like if this is, I think there is a opposite kind of fear that like, if I receive a manuscript and I want to publish it because it is by a thoughtfully diverse author, but I just don't think it's good, or I just don't think it's right? Like there is that possibility where then you kind of shirk the responsibility of saying, you have asked me to be a gatekeeper. Here is my feedback, and really clear feedback on how they get, because that's, everybody knows the game that we're playing. The problem is when you're afraid to give that feedback, then you have broken the game. And now there is no clarity. There is just this like nebulous rejection of and then you don't know what to place that rejection on. Whereas sometimes the rejection is like, something should be rejected, right? It's not ready yet. It's not, or this isn't our organization's voice, or this isn't what we do. Like, it's okay to reject something if you are clear. The real problem comes when there's not that clarity. And then the real problem comes from a macro level from that kind of gatekeeper, when they aren't realizing their position in all of this, and recognizing the places that position can damage other people purely by their presence and really power over the situation. Which is why I would, for me, the ultimate hope is that like, I don't work, and again, this is clearly just like a theme, even in my gatekeeperness, I don't work ever in isolation. I have a team where we discuss stuff, and they have called me on many things. Like good, bad stuff you're not seeing, stuff you're letting through that you shouldn't be just because you like the person, right? We're not working in isolation. I think that it is back to like, it is either ego, or even if it's more sinister, it's something darker, right? Like something that would be categorized by one of the big isms, right? Like it's one of those things. But either way, the fact that they are able to just sit in this place alone, unchecked, is super dangerous. And I would say allow yourself to be very transparent and checked. So those are the gatekeeper thoughts. Is that even close to what you were thinking?
Totally. No, yeah. I think it's really helpful, because there is that a little bit of this awareness of power that you bring. And sometimes that power, like, your audience, your organization. And so be clear, when you're sort of acting out. But I appreciate that also kind of this theme of communication and community. It's sort of recognizing, which I think is really different than kind of this Christian celebrity, the promotion of an individual.
Ugh.
But, so I think I really appreciate kind of the health and the robustness, but also sort of the check and transformation that can happen when, some of this communication, story collecting happens in a community. So I think that's super cool. One of the things that Christians for Social Action is trying to do is stir the Christian imagination, helping folks bust out of like, oh, being a faithful Christian only looks like this, to like, oh, when we, read the Bible, are there new ways that some of this looks lived out, especially in the area of justice? And I think of imagination and storytelling very close. And then I also think of like, the Gospels. When I was growing up, it was called the greatest story ever told, right? So like the Bible is, and Christianity is a storytelling faith, right? It's a faith of an arc of a great story. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about the role of this Christian imagination. I feel like the kinds of stories you tell sort of help fuel my Christian imagination. Oh, I didn't realize churches could be that in that place. Oh, I didn't realize that's what Jesus is doing in that part of the world I've never heard of. Some of those sort
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah, it's hard because who I really want to answer this question is you, but I understand the dynamic that we have. You ask a question and I answer it, so I will answer it. But I would love for you to, if you are okay with answering your own question, I'm more curious how you would answer it, and I will not be as verbose on this answer. But I don't know. Here is what I have experienced: is every person who I have ever interviewed ever has in some way alluded to the fact that you're not going to grow unless you're in some way exposed to someone else who is not exactly like you. I mean, over and over again, it was travel. When did you realize you were an activist? When was the first time you realized something wasn't right with the world? And it was, for better or worse,
Yes.
it was the mission trip. Yes, when healing hurts, I understand. But it was that exposure, and it's over and over again. What's the advice that you'd give? What would you, these questions, and over, it was like, do anything. Go anywhere that's not the place you're at.
Yes.
Walk to a place that you'd normally drive to. Do anything to physically put yourself in a different place, even if it's just. So there is something about, I think, the physicality of just experiencing something else. And it's not other, because the key, the trick is there is no other. It is only us, but we can feel separated. So part of it was just like moving into that space, even if it's not super defined. Like, I know there may be problems with us. Like, we get lost in the philosophy of like, oh, should there be a soup kitchen? Does that actually help? Doesn't it? Who cares? Tonight, I'm going to meet a person, and we're going to sit and we're going to eat soup together. And I realize it doesn't solve everything, but like, there is something in that you can't define, that I think for me. So that's been the first thing. And I do think that the second piece to that is just to try a little bit not to be afraid. Like it's okay. I remember, one of the best sermons I've ever heard. This was like early 2000s. This was pre-Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage. This was like, especially in Christian circles, this was like on fire.
Okay.
And this guy got up into the pulpit and gave a 30-minute sermon. He gave a 28-minute treatise on how the Bible explicitly prohibits and God explicitly prohibits homosexualty. And I mean, like, I'm sitting in this church dying in my seat going like, this is uncomfortable. And in the last 2 minutes, I mean, it was a big swing he took. In the last 2 minutes, he said, and I believe all of that is true, but then I met my friend. And then he talked about a person, like one of his close friends, who came out to him. And all of a sudden you realize, like, he's like, I had been afraid for so long, but then you realize, like, there is a human behind the theory. And he's like, and that blew apart all of my theory. And I realized, so this is kind of an antiquated example. We look at it now, but at the time it was like, oh, wow. And it kind of is that, to me, it's trying not to be so afraid to step out of that little world that I'm in.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do. And then I guess getting other people to tell me how they do it and then just mooching off of them. Speaking of which, how would you answer your own question?
Okay. I did not expect that question to ricochet back to me.
Hard ricochet.
Yeah.
It's like a wall. It's like a racquetball against the wall, just coming at your face. Here we go.
It's like, and those hurt when they hit,
They do hurt bad. Big welts. If you don't want to answer, I don't want to. I'm sorry. This is
No. I mean, I really like it. It was really helpful for me to hear your answer, because there is something about that when you get out of your own rut, when you do something a little different, that's when you notice all the things that you didn't realize are a part of your own, so and I think there's something in that does feed imagination. I think I initially would have said, there's something to me that's super exciting about reading something in the Bible, like a story of a community, and then releasing what the the flannel board Sunday school Christianity told you that looks like lived out, the ways that I kind of have been taught, oh, that means this. And then going and finding a community that at its heart is doing that thing, but it's in a way that's so surprising. That's what I think of in terms of feeding like Christian imaginations. I was at a food pantry, and I love reading community boards where they say, free ride, free stereo, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things at this food pantry that they were providing is for people who didn't have homes, they were offering a professional photographer to take a picture, a portrait, and a hairdresser who would do hair and makeup so that folks could have a picture of themselves.
Oh my
and that
gosh.
to me felt like that was, so folks who are coming to a food pantry, who are housing vulnerable, there were these folks who were sort of saying, this is my gift that I have. I'm a photographer. And then this other person's, I'm a hairstylist. Would you like a photo of yourself to share with your family or just to have? That to me stirs my Christian imagination. Like, oh, how many things I hear about, Christian teachers, doing this. But it's like, oh, how beautiful is that a Christian photographer and a Christian beautician or like, and how imago Dei affirming such a simple act is.
Just dignity. Like, just like affirming the dignity of people. Like,
I see,
and especially in a way that
Yeah.
it's not necessarily practically helpful. Like, that picture isn't going to like do much outside of just affirm dignity. And give them a gift they can give, or just look at themselves and smile and be happy of like a thing that that is a good one. That is really beautiful. So, Christian imagination. Yeah. Thanks for the hard throwback. No, thank you for the answer. That stirred my imagination. Well, Eddie, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's always a great joy to hang out and spend some time with you, but I have loved hearing you unpack some of how you think about storytelling and the community. You're one of my favorite people and podcast hosts and neighbors. And we just are right down the road. Probably almost see each other. Thank you. It was a privilege to be here. I love this podcast. 20-Minute Takes is a production of Christians for Social Action. Our music was created by Andre Henry, and this episode was mixed and engineered by Willoza Media. If you liked this episode, spread the word by subscribing, reviewing, or sharing. I'm your host, Nikki Toyama-Szeto. If you want to find out more about our work, visit the website at christiansforsocialaction.org.